Alright, so, I completed VMA on the Stamina Nightblade using a bow build. This is what I used. I'm going to go over champion points first, then I'm going to go into gear set, and then I'm going to go into the bars that I'm using. So starting with champion points, I'm not going to explain any of it. I'm going to go to red. I'm not going to explain things because, you know, it's all written right here for you. One more time. So those champion points aren't what I normally use for my everyday gameplay. So I wasn't really comfortable with some of the stuff. Took a little bit of getting used to. Gear sets. Hunting's Rage. I've got the Absorb Stamina enchant. So I've got the physical damage and absorb stamina. Using infused, obviously I get more stamina and I do more damage with it. Obviously golded as well. In case you don't know what Hunting's Rage does, it's a pretty standard craftable DPS set. Weapon crit, max stam, weapon crit, and the weapon damage. Not using poisons, though I do have, ignoring the crown lethals, I do have the double dot poisons. This is from quite a few patches back when they were still viable on back bar. Don't entirely recommend them, but you can do what you want. Maelstrom backbow. If you're not going to use the Maelstrom backbow, you still need to just use an infused bow with weapon damage enchant. Pretty standard DPS stuff. Those of you who don't know what the Maelstrom bow does, there you go. Monster Helm, Veli. So shout out to Chaos for helping me get that. That was very much needed. And I'm running all divines. And as you saw, the second set I'm using is Vicious Ophidian, because of the fact that it helps against trial and dungeon monsters and arena monsters, therefore helps out in arena. Reducing the cost of abilities by 8% and restoring stamina, which is also always a good thing. The other thing is that this major expedition actually comes in quite handy. When you're using the bow build, you don't really have any sort of damage reductions. There's no mitigation really. You don't have access to the razor, I can't remember what it's called, the dual wield ability that has the razor blades flying around you. I forget what it's called. So you can't really mitigate damage very well. I do have one ability on the bar that I use in kind of like needed defensive situations. Everything's golded out. I have weapon damage on my jewelry and robust. I do have a lot of stamina, but that's because even with damage, or even with ability cost reduction from VO, bow abilities still cost a lot, and you're going to be spamming like basically you're going to be spamming one of them and you're going to be popping another 2 quite frequently. So it's also nice to be able to sustain for when you're popping vigor. It's kind of needed, so lots of stamina. Character, this is unbuffed, so what we're looking at here. I've got 7 into health here because I didn't want to bother putting health and chance on my gear. I don't know if you noticed, but it's pretty much all stamina. Max magic is really low, but you really don't need it because there's only like 2 abilities that use it, and it's not important. I do have fairly high crit chance, even before popping potions and whatnot. I am using the Lover. Shout out to Yaris for suggesting that I change from Warrior when I was on, I forget what I was using when I was on my Mage, my Sork, but switching to Lover actually does help quite a bit. It's a lot better than than if I were to try and go in there with Warrior. As you saw, my weapon damage is still fairly high. Again, this is unbuffed. I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys what it looks like buffed. The bar itself is not something, again, that I was really comfortable with. So we have, and then we pop this as well, and there we are, buffed, which isn't too bad. I was pushing a lot closer to 4K weapon damage when I was using Warrior, which is great and all, but not having penetration was kind of a bad thing. The stam recovery is good. Lots of stamina in the first place. Health recovery, ideally, if you could, you put a bit higher. I am an Imperial. Next patch with Wrathstone, being able to get health and stamina and even magicka back on direct damage attacks is something that I'm super excited about. So should again help this build quite a bit. Abilities on our bars. Our front bar, I put Vigor on the front, obviously for healing. This is my protection kind of, oh crap, I need something to kind of reduce incoming damage. It is extremely expensive, but again, that is why I have a ton of stamina. 34 point something stam is probably too much in most people's opinion. Also, having 18k health is probably too much in most people's opinion, aside from VMA, but that's essentially what I run all the time. Then we've got Camouflage Hunter. This is, if you know anything about the Fighters Guild skill line, you know that this stuff is usually just sitting here to increase damage and critical. Excuse me. Reaper's Mark. This is one of our magicka abilities. You're only going to be putting this on priority targets. In a pinch, if you have the magicka, which you should, because you're hardly ever using magicka on this build, you could toss it on, and you've got the time for it, toss it on an enemy that's just about to die, and when it does die, you're going to get 60% of your health and gain Major Berserk, increasing damage done by 25%. So again, that does help. It reduces, it applies Major Fracture and Major Breach, but then when they die, you get Major Berserk, and you also get 60% of your max health, which is phenomenal. Could actually literally save your life in certain situations. Then this is what we're going to be spamming with. I do want to state that I did try for a while, a couple of levels, Crushing Weapon. In theory, Crushing Weapon should be better. You're going to deal physical damage. It's costing you less. You heal for 25%. sounds great, but something that I was finding I had a problem with was the fact that I would hit Crushing Weapon, and due to just Elder Scrolls lag, I'd hit Crushing Weapon, I would hit my light attack, and the light attack wouldn't fire, and then I'd go to hit Crushing Weapon again, thinking that light attack was going to have fired, and only end up wasting it. And with the changes that they've made to Crushing Weapon, you don't get all of the resource return. So with the next update, you won't get all of it. But so I was just basically spamming this over and over and over again for no reason, which was taking up time, which wasn't doing its job, which means I wasn't healing. So I've decided to stick with focused aim. It costs more, but it's reliable, and the odd occasion where you get into a situation where you get caught in that animation bug, it's really not that big of a deal. It happens so much less than the issue I was having with Crushing Weapon. Focused aim specifically, you're using this again, it's going to apply less damage than I believe the poison version of it. I can't even remember the name of it anymore. Don't use it. But the real reason you're using this is that this one also applies minor fracture. So on top of your major fracture and major breach, you're getting minor fracture as well. So an additional additional reduction to their physical resistance. Then obviously on the front bar we've got Flawless Dawnbreaker. Again, this one is here for the while slotted your weapon does increased damage, or your weapon damage is increased by 5%. Sorry. Cheap ultimate if you need to. I didn't really pop it a whole lot. Literally use my ultimate on my back bar more than anything. It's what I'm used to, and again, I pretty much only pop the ultimate on obviously bosses. Second bar, we've got Relentless Focus. This is primarily a buff bar. I chose not to put Channel Focus on here because it does mean that I would have to give up something on this bar, and as far as I'm concerned, everything on here is too important. Relentless Focus, you get minor Berserk and minor Endurance, increasing damage done by 8% and increasing stam recovery by 10% for 20 seconds. So top of that, you obviously get every 5 attacks. You get the Spectral Bow, which is great. I didn't fire it a whole lot, mainly because it is on the back bar. It's going to be fired for a lot less than you would expect. And I found that it just didn't really pop enough while I was actually on my back bar. I would hear it go off while I'm on my front bar, switch, and then due to Elder Scrolls glitches, when I got back onto my back bar, I'd go to hit my Spectral Bow, only to find that I've just now reapplied Relentless Focus, and I wasted stamina. So I mostly just kept this up as a buff rather than firing off the Spectral Bow. Poison Ejection, standard ability, not going to talk about it. You see what it does. You could use this as an execute, but I personally don't bother, just because you'd have to spam it, and it doesn't really do much except reapply a dot, and the dot isn't going to get any stronger. Leeching Strikes, again, pretty standard ability for most stamina Night Blades. You get health, you get stamina back, and you restore more stamina when it ends based on the length of time that it was active in the first place. So obviously hitting this again before it runs out will restore some more stamina, but you restore more if you just let it expire on its own. The trick is, I guess, to pop it just before it's about to go off. Endless Hail, again, standard AoE. And Caltrops, standard AoE. And then lastly, standard bow build ultimate. Ton of damage. I love this thing. I used to use the... Again, can't even remember the name of it. The other morph where you are the one firing the bow. Unfortunately, you are subject to interrupt. If you dodge roll, you cancel it. If you block, you cancel it. You end up wasting the ultimate, and more importantly, if you weapon swap, you cancel it. So if you're in a situation where you need to do any of those things, well, you end up wasting the ultimate. So pop ballista, you still stay mobile, and fire off your abilities. That's pretty much it for that. Wasn't really comfortable with the original build that I had. Wasn't comfortable with this build. This is not how I normally play. My bars are not normally set up quite like this, and so it did take a little while to get used to. If you have Reliquin, that would work a lot better than I want to say it would work better than VO, but personally, the mobility that VO offers after killing enemies, you kill one crappy little trash archer who you need to prioritize anyways, you're going to get major expedition, which is going to help you with things like kiting the Daedroth, the fire-breathing, whatever their names are. It's going to help you with kiting AoEs that are being thrown down. It's going to help you move a little bit faster if you happen to get snared. So I don't know, I want to say VO is the better choice here, but Arms of Reliquin would definitely help you burn enemies faster. I don't know how entirely it would work. Advancing Yokeda is apparently the meta. I don't use it. I don't much care to use it, to be honest. Pretty much anything could work. You more or less need to focus on the CP, and you really have to be committed to using the bow and getting your timing down. You start with all your buffs, toss your AoEs, pop your poison injection, you're going to bar swap, you're going to hit this. Normally you're going to have that up as well if they're an enemy that you actually want to prioritize. And then sees my bow pop there again. And then you obviously want to just really practice it. It's important to practice your rotation, obviously, even though me personally, I found that knowing my rotation was great and all, but with VMA on a bow build, you don't really get enough opportunity to really push your rotation. It's going to constantly have you moving, blocking, dodging. For me, the spinning blades of Set's wheel, despite it being a very early level and me being able to just blast through that on my sword due to shields, with this character, it kept downing me, and I was getting so frustrated. Those blades were just constantly spinning so fast, and I could swear that they were faster on a Nightblade for some reason than they were on my sword. So just get used to your rotation. Just know what you need to put down, and figure out what you need to prioritize, because making sure that you prioritize things like a boss and things like, for me, getting those hunters that were throwing ice arrows like every second was so infuriating, and just knowing that on a medium build, you can't, with no shields, you can't take hits. So you need to think about dodging. You really got to understand the way that the enemies work. Really understand the mechanics. So that's what I've got as a setup. I don't know if there's anything that I missed. Oh, potions. So I think the only thing that I missed here, and it is, I'm using Dubious Camoran Throne for my buff, and I'm using the obvious essence of weapon power. You can look up what they do. Other than that, there's not much to it. Just, I guess if you know VMA, you should have an okay time. And other than that, I hope this helped. And thanks for watching, and also thanks for the support to everyone in the guild who threw it at me. Cheers.